If you're starting a business, you want to make sure that you're keeping your business and your personal affairs separate so as not to pierce the corporate veil. I'm going to tell you why this is so important, especially for businesses going offshore in this video. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson here at Nomad Capitalist. We help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors go where they're treated best legally with offshore tax planning, things like second passports to increase your options and your freedoms, and new boom markets that you can be a part of. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Now, I am not an attorney. We work with a lot of attorneys here at Nomad Capitalist, but I'm not an attorney, and hence this is not legal advice. But I want to talk to you as a lifelong entrepreneur about a concept I've always followed very carefully. Because growing up in the United States, where I think this concept of piercing the corporate veil is largely talked about, the idea was always that if you run your company as a sham, if you run it as a front to protect you from liability, you're going to get in trouble. And so let's step back a second and discuss what this means. You as a person want to go out and start a business. And so to protect yourself and to add some level of organization, you go out and start a company. It could be an LLC, a limited company, PTY limited, whatever the type of company is where you live. You go out and start a company, and generally, if it's just you, or if it's you and a buddy, you or you and your buddy are the shareholders. You are the owners. There's not some complicated ownership structure. And what I will see people doing at times when I'm talking to folks who are running domestic companies and they want to do the stuff that we talk about, they want to move their business offshore, I'll ask them how they're running their business. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I just take money from the ATM when I need it, or I'll just write myself checks, whenever the need comes. I ask them how much liquidity they keep in their business. Sometimes they say they keep almost all their liquidity in the business, which isn't a bad thing. Sometimes they raid the company never has any money, they have the money. And so, again, my not legal advice is you want to make sure that you're keeping your business and yourself separate. This is not only true in the US, there's a similar concept in the UK and Germany and elsewhere. But the idea is if you are operating a company merely to protect yourself from liability in your own personal affairs, then in a court action, whether it's bankruptcy or insolvency, whether it's some kind of civil action, someone's suing the company, they can actually ask the court to pierce the corporate veil and basically say, hey, poke past that corporate layer and go after this guy personally. Because we've seen examples in the past in court where somebody left one company, signed a non-compete agreement, went to work for himself as a consultant, violating the non-compete, and did so through a company. Well, you can't do that just because you put a company umbrella on top of you. It doesn't really, doesn't dissolve you of your personal obligations, right? A company is not a shield against any kind of unethical or illegal activity. But what we more commonly see in our business is when people come to us is people are just treating the company as their own slush fund. And while courts, from what I have talked to our lawyers about, are generally reticent to pierce the corporate veil, it can be done, especially if you're going to go and claim your company's bankrupt after you looted the company, or if you're taking all the money out of the company and leaving it not enough money to survive, again, an insolvency proceeding, or in a civil proceeding, people can go against you because you took all the money. It's kind of like a fraudulent conveyance. But here's why this is important in the offshore world, right? Because we're generally taking people who are running companies in the US, Australia, whatever, and we're migrating those companies overseas, or at least we're adding a layer of offshore incorporation to the existing structure. Overseas, this is also very important because, number one, you may have an audit overseas, and you can't just be taking, random sums of money out. You have to put a name to it, right? And so while in your home country, in the United States where I come, for example, you may be able just to say, hey, I have an LLC. It's basically the same thing for tax purposes, so I just take out money when I want, and the tax returns aren't as complicated. Sometimes you go offshore to a good jurisdiction. They may require a higher level, more complex audit. They want to know where the money's going. You've got to say, okay, I took a dividend. Well, now depending on where you live, depending on where your citizenship is, especially if you're a U.S. citizen, well, now you took a dividend. That may not jive well with where you're living for offshore tax planning purposes. If you're a U.S. citizen and you take a dividend from most foreign companies, that's going to either be, at the very best, complicated, at the very worst, very expensive if you have a high withholding tax rate or a high income tax rate applied to that. So really what's important is to understand when you're taking your business offshore, it's important to double down on this idea of running your company and yourself, your own personal finances in a separate manner. It's a question that I ask folks when I'm helping them. Is I make sure that we are putting a separation. And what I hear people often is, I ask them, let's talk about only personal finance. Tell me where your personal bank accounts are. And they start to like weave in stuff about the business. They must be separate. You're going to have a lot of grief in many cases going offshore if you treat the company like a piggy bank. Put yourself on a salary. Put yourself on a dividend schedule. Perhaps give yourself a bonus schedule. It really depends on, again, where you're living for tax reasons and where the company is incorporated. But you want to have some consistent way of taking money out of the company. That will help for other things that you might want to do offshore, by the way, also. Let's say you want to go apply for a residence permit in a country that requires you to show the last 6 months of income statements. Just random ATM withdrawals aren't going to solve that problem. They're going to be like, what's this? You want to show them, every first of the month I take out $10,000 and show them the company paid my personal account. Very clean. So it's clean for your overseas audit. It's clean for the country that you're living in or the country that you're a citizen of. It's clean for their purposes. It all makes sense, okay? And what I see when you go offshore is you really need to have more discipline than sometimes people have in their home countries, because you've now got multiple jurisdictions involved. Again, I do not recommend, for the most part, that you set up your company in a place where you live and in a place where you're a citizen, right? You want to compartmentalize your life. Your company's incorporated in one place, you live in another place, you're a citizen of another place. That way you're going to get the best bang for your buck, you're going to get the best deal, okay? But you've got to now keep all those three parts of the puzzle happy. And ATM withdrawals, whenever you're in the mood, doesn't work, okay? I've heard people who go to jurisdictions where they take money out to pay for their kids, diapers. I don't recommend that. Keep what the company be what the company is, and then just take money out of the company to pay for what it is that you want. If the company wants to reinvest in itself, then let it self-sustain. And that's the beauty of incorporating offshore. If your tax rate is 0 or 5%, then the company has a lot more money it was previously paying in tax to reinvest. You don't have to be moving money back and forth. It allows you to keep things more clean. But you really have to keep your business affairs and your personal affairs separate in any business if you want to enjoy the legal limited liability of a business structure. Again, not really giving you legal advice on that one, but I'm telling you offshore, it's more important from a legal perspective, from an audit perspective. If you're doing other things like immigrating, improving income, that's important. You want to get all your ducks in a row. So make sure that whatever you're doing in your business, you are not piercing the corporate veil. You're keeping things separate. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.